We brag about it, we boast about it, and we'll deal with that. Areas of thought here. One area of thought is he's using this as a jump off point to discuss some other things, or rabbi was happy with you. You wanted to make sure your rabbi was elevated in your life. And so rabbis were not allowed to accept money from people, but they would have a trade. And one of the ways that people showed their kindness was they bought a lot of their trade about Jesus. That was something that was also normal in the synagogues, that they would have a time of open testimony where anybody could stand up and share. We know that isn't the rabbi. Paul and Timothy also would go into synagogues, do the exact same thing. They would take a time to share the gospel because it was an open forum in that moment. Jesus in this moment, and you believe Jesus in this teaching, and he groups himself in with this whole statement. Because James himself is a pastor. He's someone who's in charge of a church. And so he's referring to the functions of an official teacher or preacher in this moment. He's not talking about anybody that can share the gospel. He's talking about anyone that's going to say, I'm going to do this. So what small group leaders. And so that's what we're talking about here. Not just the pastor on the stage, but in this. Don't be too quick to act in this. And it's because it's that capacity. Luke 4:16 through 27 discusses that. John 3:10, Acts 13:14 through 15, 1 Corinthians 12:28, and Ephesians 4:11. Too many at the time were seeking the status of teacher without the necessary. To be a teacher means that you are going to be elevated in the community. And teacher's a high status thing anymore? No. And I'm not just saying that because I'm married to one. But the teachers that are in the room, retired or current, can tell you it's not a high status thing. If anything, you're scraping just trying to make it because it's just gotten worse. Gospel of Christ. And we're going to talk about why here in a second, but that is a greater condemnation and judgment. Why? Number one, and say, listen to me, I have a word from God. So to the false teacher, Jude 13 and 14 discusses that. And secondly, the believer, when he is encouraged true teachers, but to warn the prospective teacher of the roles. When I first got to our church, we had a youth praise team. Some of the kids were not happy about it because I was requiring them to put skin in the game. But when I told them, there's no Bible lesson. I'm teaching them how to do these things. Why? So that they don't have to wait on somebody else to tell them what to do or how to read the Bible. I'm teaching them how to teach. Why? Because we don't have enough people standing on the gospel anymore. I want them prepared to know if they're false or they're right. Ezekiel chapter 3, verses 17 and 18 says, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. If I seek it from his wicked way, in order to save his life, that wicked person shall die for his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. So what God's telling the prophet here is, look, if I send you to go tell this person, and they choose not to follow, then it is not on our heads. Y'all remember the story I told you about the kid last? He didn't want to be there. He didn't care, and he was distracting everybody. And I finally just looked at him and said, dude, I just don't care about you anymore. And he looked at me, he was like, you don't care? I said, no. I said, I know what is going to happen when you die, Christ, at the end of the day. But I told him where he was going because I was not, no, I had in our area, let's be honest. Right? But it's about preaching in love and care and compassion. Acts 20, 26 through 27 says, Therefore I testify to you this day that I am innocent of the blood of all. For I did not shrink from declaring to you the whole counsel of God. This is Paul talking here. He's like, I'm innocent. I've given you exactly what I was supposed to do. It's not on me anymore. Hebrews 13:17, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be to no advantage to you. Here's the fun thing, just for a second. What if we recognize pastors as being individuals who are keeping that we interact with that pastor? Would it change the way we listen to that pastor? Would it change the stumble in many ways? And if anyone does not stumble in what he said it all at you like a fire hydrant, but I can give it to y'all if y'all want it later. The tongue has immense power to speak sinfully, erroneously, and inappropriately. Human speech is a graphic representation of human depravity. If you don't believe me, all you have to do is get around a group of high schoolers, and you will hear the depravity of this world. And the really sad part is, in a lot of churches today, all you have to do is get into the foyer during the service around the men that are supposed to be the ushers and the deacons. And the jokes and the coarse talk that you hear is insane. It's inside the body. It's inside the building. In Scripture, the tongue is variously described, y'all ready for this? As wicked, deceitful, perverse, filthy, corrupt, flattering, slanderous, gossiping, blasphemous, foolish, boasting, complaining, cursing, contentious, sensual, and vile. And that's not even an exhaustive list. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the top. And so we have to be careful not to allow our tongues to cause us to stumble. Because as a teacher, the fastest way for me to lose the authority or the ability that I have to teach is my tongue, is my mouth. Because if I say something that's off color, I say something that's not right, I say something that's untruthful, I say something in the public, guess what? I've just destroyed everything that I've worked for. Insignificant does such an amazing, amazing thing. The tongue of the world. What'd you push? For y'all watching, it's Ethan's fault if you can't see the screens right now. Anyway, but see, nowhere is the relation. It's Ethan Coates. He's the one that ruined it. I'm picking part of our normal speech, and there's a problem with how we're doing things. What you on you, whatever's on the inside, is going to come spilling out. And so in the hardest, most difficult, most arduous time, if that pressure is so great, what is spilling out is the joy of the Lord, and what is spilling out is crying out for help from Him. And what's spilling out at all these things, then guess what? You are all these other things, you are not a spiritually mature person. Now, I would love to be able to tell you every time difficulty comes my way, it's the joy of the Lord. No, it's not. It's not. Sorry, that's right. So I'm working at, and how do I know that? How do I learn that? Why? By studying His Word, by reading, by digging into this stuff so that I can understand it better, so that when that pressure. So let's talk about inner speech for just 2 seconds. It's the whole course of life. It defiles, it does all these things. Like fire, a tongue's sinful words can spread everything around it. Do y'all realize is true that our character should reach people's ear, character that they have heard of? ADD brain goes to Lion King in the song, right? There are certain individuals that heard about it. Oh yeah, and it's grown since then. I love them. Hell conjures up not just the place, but the satanic host that will someday inherit it. Only God, by His. However, the tongue, small and influential, the tongue must be discussing teachers in the tongue to dealing with wisdom, Testament wisdom, God's wisdom. All right? Wise and understanding, as it says in verse 13, says this, in the meekness, wise problems we have today. The opposite of arrogance and self-promotion. Opposite of arrogance and self-promotion. Fruit of the Spirit, gentleness. Galatians 5:20. Long lives. We got to. That whole idea of bitter jealousy. The bitter is a Greek word used for undrinkable water. It defines in their lives. It'd be eating them up from the inside. Why? Because they have a resentful attitude towards others. Right. Wisdom that comes down. This is not the wisdom that comes down. You're not even that a believer can become that way. And does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because their spirit himself is an angel of light. Down to is this, is there are people within the sea. We see that in Psalms, people when others revile you and persecute you under all kinds of evil against who has a Matthew chapter 5 verses 3 through 5. Blessed are the meek, put it above it. Blessed are you if you're willing to submit to that authority. Who's full of mercy, the gift 5:7 of Matthew. Blessed righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. The comes because we've learned to control. Simple question: can you stand up to chapter 3? Or is chapter 3 time? Spend some time on your knees this